All right, in today's video, let's talk about how I would scale Google Ads for an e-commerce store that has a ton of SKUs. And by ton of SKUs, I mean starting from 1,000 in your merchant center to all the way to 100,000 or even over capacity in your merchant center and your CSS. So in today's video, I wanted to talk about the approach you want to take when you're just getting started on Google Ads. The budget I recommend is $100 per day because that way you have enough to get conversions every single day. And then you can progress your bidding strategy. You can increase budget in a sustainable way because Google has enough data to play off of. So a lot of contributing factors about that. You'll want to stick around because I'll break down the entire strategy of that. Okay, so let's dive right into it. So because if you think about it, you're a high-SKU store, you want to be able to test as many brands and products as quick as possible. So you have two ways to do this, but one is better than the other. The first approach people like, even if you're starting on a new account, is doing something called a standard shopping campaign, which again, if we choose sales and then we go to shopping, we can have a standard shopping campaign. The difference between a standard shopping and Performance Max campaign is you can start on a manual CPC bidding strategy. It's a lot more robust and mature in the sense you have a ton of control in terms of what you can do, but it doesn't do a very good job of testing a ton of products. I like to run it when we have enough data to run on a target return on ad spend because you don't have a maximized conversions bidding strategy like Performance Max or max conversion value. Again, the bidding strategies are important because you always want to be optimizing for conversions. So here we're just comparing and contrasting. So in standard shopping, you can't do that. So that's why honestly, even for a new account, I would launch on Performance Max and I would have 70 to 80% of the budget pushed towards the shopping network here. In terms of the overall budget allocation, right? Because you want to be focusing on search terms that people are showing intent to purchase your product and obviously not searching your own personal brand. So maybe you're reselling other brands and you have a ton of SKUs that way, or you just have a ton of variation or different types of products. But either way, you want to be able to test these quick. So the way I like to do this is with Performance Max, and then we're going to set it to a max conversions bidding strategy. All right, so I just named the campaign, added the merchant center. We want to start off with the max conversions, and this is what I was talking about, right? Because again, with standard shopping, you're just going to be stuck bidding on traffic, and it'll be harder to get to that point of conversions. And you're going to have to add a lot more negative keywords, I would say, than you would have to in Performance Max. And especially because we can see search terms now within Performance Max, it's better to just run it and then have an exclusion list where you are applying negative keywords to it. Okay, it functions the same as any other type of campaign. We'll start off on a max conversions, and then eventually you're going to want to set a target cost per action. So let's say you're achieving a $50 or $60 cost per conversion, be it a sale, be it a lead, or whatever else is your objective for your business, because sometimes people, especially higher SKU or higher ticket stores, have a lot of call volume. So we're going to set it on max conversions anyway, because the conversion is defined by a purchase or a call. And then eventually we set a target. So if you're achieving, like I said, $50 to $60, I set it super aggressively because, again, you want to think of these as guardrails. You don't want to think of these as restrictors, right? Because having them as guardrails, the algorithm knows, okay, I can be X aggressive until I have to really pull back. Right. And you want it to always be as aggressive as possible, because otherwise you're going to choke spend. You're not going to be able to show up for searches that, you would want to show up for, people that have intent to purchase. And again, if you're more aggressive than other advertisers, your competitors, then you're going to get better visibility as well. The bidding is a huge component of that. Okay, so for now, let's start on max conversions. You have two options for Performance Max and then conversion value, target return on ad spend. I don't really play around with this, at least at the start of the account, because we don't have any data. Let's continue. So in campaign settings, we want to make sure we only target one country. I would definitely only start with one country, because otherwise you're just going to be way too widespread. You can even start with a few states. That works as well. Like if you're targeting high population states like Florida, with a lot of demand, again, depends on your product. Here, we're just going to do Canada, for example, but apply this to your case as well. And then make sure you're only targeting people in or regularly in included locations. You don't want to target people with interest. Language only English. No, we don't use EU political ads. And then here, of course, always make sure that you have a brand exclusion list. Okay, so you can do two things here. What this means to start off is you're not allowing Performance Max to show up for searches for your brand. And you don't want that because that is always going to be the lowest hanging fruit. That's the easiest way for the algorithm to get conversions. And eventually, when you start scaling up budget, because brand wasn't excluded and you thought, oh, I'm getting a 5 or 6 or 7x return on ad spend, all of a sudden you're not growing your business. Okay, so we always want to make sure brand is excluded here. You can create a new brand list. Process is pretty simple here. And then Google already has like a preset set of brands. Maybe somebody else already added your brand in the brand exclusion, or it picks it up. But you can request your own brand, so like you can create it. And then one more thing we're going to do after is add negative keywords of our own brand, right? Because this is just a foolproof way. Google cannot show ads for our own brand. And one more thing I would say is you can add competitors here as well. So either you know your competitors, or you can even go into ChatGPT and ask for kind of a similar list of competitors, people that offer similar products to me. And then you can enter all of their websites here into a brand list so that we're not targeting those. Again, either way, you're going to have to add negative keywords, but that's a good starter when you're launching the campaign. Okay, everything else I would leave. Typically, we're going to spend mostly on computers and mobile phones. What will happen is people will browse on their mobile phones, and then they'll go to computers to actually purchase. So sometimes these devices play a role together because it's, again, not like somebody clicks once on your ad and purchases right away. There's so many different touch points, and you want to make sure you're not limiting that really in any way. If you start to see a lot of spend on tablet, that's where I would start to exclude. TV typically doesn't spend at all because, again, we're running a feed-only performance max, which means we're only going to target the shopping network instead of a standard shopping campaign. All right, so now we're on the asset groups tab. All you want to make sure is that you put in the final URL, but leave headlines, descriptions, long headlines, any images, assets, everything empty, because that way the only network that we are eligible to show ads on is shopping ads, right? Because the only thing we've really added is products. We attach that merchant center at the start. And then I'm going to show you how you actually categorize these products in a well-structured way as well. One more thing you want to look out for here is I would actually turn off the customization and final URL expansion, because this is going to just create its own ad copy pretty much. That's what Performance Max is going to do. And then go past the URLs that you've selected. For now, we don't want to do that. And plus, we're only running shopping anyway, which is going to go straight to product page at the start. And then image enhancements, landing page images, take everything off. Video enhancements, take this off as well. And then after we create the actual campaign, we want to make sure that we have search themes and then audience signals as well. I do this in a very, very simple way. We don't want to overcomplicate it. Okay, and then average daily budget, I'm going to start this off with a $60 per day budget. Again, using the example of $100 per day, most of the spend is going to go to non-branded side, because we're also going to have a $25 per day search campaign and then a brand and small remarketing campaign. So we want to have enough room for all of those because they're super, super important in the actual overall strategy. So let's click next. Okay, so we published the campaign. So here, what you see, I called it was a feed-only best-selling brands. What that means is either you have key performing product categories or brands that you resell, or a specific set of SKUs that you want to target. Either way, that's the only thing you want to be focusing on with Google Ads. Because think about it. If you're just starting out with Google Ads, you want to be very specific with the products you target. You don't want to give it pretty much everything on the moon, especially if you have tens of thousands of SKUs. You want to be pretty segmented in terms of what you focus on. And then as you get more budget, we target more products. Maybe when we cap out on demand or we see certain products don't perform, that's where you layer in new ones to test. But for now, we want to tell it exactly what we want to target. Okay, so let's go into the campaign specifically. Okay, so we are taken to this page, and then we want to go to listing groups. And then what you really want to make sure is you don't just target all products like this. What you want to focus on is there's different options to categorize. If you press plus, there's going to be different options that you have here, right? So item ID is going to be the simplest one because you can choose IDs. I don't recommend to do this because what happens on your back end, you might switch an ID for a certain product, and then that's no longer going to be pushed in ads. And it's just not a sustainable way to do that because everything's so manual. You don't really have any insight on categories that perform. My favorites to really do, you can do by product type. So if you already have this mapped in Shopify or WooCommerce, if you have, let's say you have a certain type of hoodie or you have a certain type of pant, you can segment it that way so that all the SKUs within that go into that category. I even like to do like subcategories of a product category. So you have maybe one main product category, and then within that you have 4 to 5 key performers that these just the products under this subcategory do super, super well. And the way that you can do that is with a custom label. So a custom label, it really needs to be mapped on the back end. And by what I mean by that data for it to push into the custom label needs to be taken from somewhere. Where it would sit initially, and the best way to do it is with a tag. So if you go to your Shopify and actually set up tags for specific products, so if product contains X and X, we want to push it into this custom label, and then we'll create different custom labels within either Merchant Center, or you can create it within a feed optimization tool, which if you watch one of the videos on my channel, I covered exactly how to set this up. But that way we have different custom labels for each category, and it's very organized, right? Because think of this, what I want you to think of custom labels as is like your ad group structure. Because with Performance Max or shopping, you don't have keywords you're targeting, and your ad groups are not grouped by keywords the way it would be in a search campaign. Here, what you have are product groups or listing groups, and you want to make sure that your listing group is very organized in the sense you can very easily say, okay, this brand just is bullshit. Like, it's not getting us any sales. We can just cut it off right away, rather than you having to dive in if we were on item ID, which product, and each product doesn't have enough spend because we only spend $60 per day for this campaign. At the start, this is really the best way to do it. And we can call these subcategory 1, for example. And then you'll have like subcategory 2, 3, and those will be the different ones that you have. So in this case, we did 3 different categories. Again, if you have this mapped on your backend, you're actually going to see the custom labels to use. But again, in this case, we're just doing a demo. So you always want to refrain from using just all products. Make sure you're either going by product type or by custom label. And now going back to the audience signal. So with the audience signal, the theme that I want to reiterate in your head is simplicity. Okay, because we need to be simple when we're setting up the search themes, audience signals. We want to be very clear as to how we want to target. And if you don't know already, search themes are almost like a point of insight for the algorithm. It's not actual keywords, right? It's not keywords you're targeting, but it's a good signal. So what I would do is, if you're already running on Amazon, for example, or just do some keyword research of your own, go into Keyword Planner, look at put in your website, put in some kind of key terms that you have ideas of, and really add 5 of the highest intent ones. Make sure they're different variations of each other as search themes. I would not add 50 because, again, think about it. You're kind of cluttering the algorithm with the signal that you provided. There's just too much insight for it. And so again, fresh account, we want to be simple. Same thing with audiences. You want to choose, there's different types of audiences, but I would add as much first-party data as possible. Add a customer list. So in Shopify, you can actually connect your customer list, which basically means just a list of people that have purchased from you, all of their emails, address, or contact info, and all of that information can be passed back to Google, because all of a sudden, think of it as like you're importing conversions. You're basically giving it data on past converters, and then now it can go out and find people similar to those people in terms of their characteristics, shopping behaviors online, and that way, again, you can just get better performance quicker, right? Because you don't have to just rely on conversions from your campaign. So I would add that as first party data. Again, also website visitors, cart abandoners, whatever you have, but obviously the best signal is going to be people that purchased from you, or you can do like an all converters if you already have that in the platform. So only a few audiences here. I wouldn't segment too much, but again, simplicity is key here. That's going to be it for this video. I'm going to make follow-up videos on this, how we layer in the search campaigns and the approach for that. But really the idea of this video was to show you, if you're a high-SKU store, really the first campaign you should be launching on Google is something like a feed-only Performance Max campaign, because like I said, optimize for conversions. You can give it some search themes to target. You can add in audience signals and leverage the customer list, so previous purchasers that you have. And that way you can get results as quickly as possible with Google Ads, right? Because the whole idea is you're starting on this budget, start to get some proof of concept, maybe even get like a 2-to-1 ROAS, or profitability wise, at least you have some money left over, and you want to just keep pouring fuel on the fire. If you can reinvest money into this and keep growing your spend, Google is going to reward you, right? Because you're feeding it with more data, and it's going to be easier to get more purchases in the future. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know down in the comments. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.